Firstly, Happy New Year to everybody and welcome to 2025. We are very fortunate to have our first episode with Beyond the Lab series with Professor Ed Wild, who I'm sure needs no introduction to any of you. He has very generously given his time to discuss the creation of HDBuzz and how it's become a trusted resource for you, the Huntington's community, to understand what research is happening in the Huntington's disease space and the exciting developments at this point in time. So I hope you enjoy this interview. Ed, thank you so much for being here this morning, particularly given the time difference and your busy schedule. I've known you for a long time, and I don't think there's one occasion where I have seen you sitting still. So when I say you're busy, you are busy. So I thank you for being here.
It's my pleasure, Tammy. Anything for Huntington's, Vic.
And I know that the community here will be really pleased to have the opportunity to hear directly from you about HDBuzz, its creation, your involvement, yours and Jeff's involvement in it, and where it's at today. So I think that's a really good starting point in discussing what inspired you and Jeff to create HDBuzz, and were there particular gaps that you felt HDBuzz could address?
Yeah, it's Jeff and I remember meeting at the Huntington's Therapeutics conference in Palm Springs, and it must have been 2008. So I've been in HD for 3 years, which is not long at all. And we were introduced, and we kind of quickly got on. We were about the same age, and we were both slightly kind of sarcastic and snarky and liked gossiping about people. And you know, we quickly started talking about how great the science was that was happening and that we were hearing at the meeting, but how different it seemed to be that the families were reading on a lot of the websites and blogs. There were people making really solid attempts to produce scientific reporting for families, but because they were not scientists themselves, they weren't embedded within the research community, it was very difficult for them to have a kind of sense of perspective or of the context of the research. So everything, whether it was a drug trial or a charlatan selling stem cell injections in China that would be nothing of the sort when they happen, they would all be treated with a kind of equal level of excitement. And what we wanted to do was tap into the hope, the general sense of hope that we knew was present in the community, and link that up with good quality information so that people would have very specific things to hope for. You know, if something was just a con or pseudoscience, we would let them know. That's rare, though. More commonly, something would be exciting, but it would be there's 100 other things that need to happen before you can get this new mouse experiment into patients and into the form of a pill that could help people. And so we always start with hope, but then we would always end with a reality check. You know, this is cool, but how realistic is it as a potential future treatment for HD? And we called it substantive hope. So it was basically encouraging people to have general hope that someday the world will develop better treatments for HD, but we wanted people to get really specific and have individual things to hope for. Like back in those days, it was, we hope that the first monkey trial of a Huntington lowering drug will be safe and well tolerated. The first time that approach is tested in a sort of higher primate species, we hope that will be safe, because that's the last thing that needs to happen before it gets into humans. You know, it was always about making their science understandable, making it accessible, and keeping people's attention by making it kind of fun to read with analogies and jokes. And I suppose it also came with the kind of Ed and Jeff show, which was Charles Sabine's idea. And we kind of premiered it at the World Congress in Vancouver in 2009. And that was where we discovered the value of leaving our dignity at the side of the stage, because, you know, things take much longer if there's a sense that scientists or doctors are different from patients and families, but we're all patients and we're all members of families. Jeff is a member of an HD family. I don't have HD in my family, but I have relatives with neurodegenerative diseases, and everyone knows illness, and you have to hope that someone's working on whatever you're going to get someday. So we started doing this kind of silly science reporting. Not silly, it was always factual at its core, but we didn't mind making fools of ourselves, or more often actually making fools of each other. And that seemed to really connect with people. HD is so depressing, and we're not trying to make light of it. We never were, but if we can tell people what's going on while entertaining, or at least giving people a smile, then I feel like that's a pretty good day's work.
I think you underestimate, if I could say, the chemistry between you and Jeff. I've seen you both present. So I've been at Huntington's Victoria since 2009, so probably far too long. But I've seen you both present over that period of time, and I think the chemistry that you had and the relaxed way you presented research made it so accessible and less frightening, I think, for people. And I think that was a real key to how you presented personally, but also through HDBuzz.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, in those days, it was a real kind of, I guess it was the website and the printed, the words online were a kind of expression of our personalities and our relationship, actually, because back at the start, we wrote everything ourselves before we brought extra writers on board. So yeah, it was kind of very personal to us, but HD is very personal, honestly, to all of the people who work on it. It's pretty unusual for scientists to leave the HD field just because you so quickly make connections. Actually, just a bit of a sidebar anecdote. I was once at a dinner with the Huntington's Disease Association UK, and there was a disco afterwards, and they gave out little kind of Oscars for scientific contributions. It was just a bit of fun, and they gave me the microphone when they gave me my award, which was a big mistake. Anyway, I said I started my thanks by saying I'm not a member of an HD family, and someone in the audience shouted, "Yes, you are." And honestly, it's one of the most moving things anyone's ever said to me, and it really does feel like I'm a member of this global family, and I feel deeply honoured to have been able to serve this community for as many years as I have. I'd like to be able to stop by having a treatment for HD.
Well, I think if anyone's going to do it, you will. And I absolutely think that's what comes across. Jeff comes from a Huntington's family, but you have a real commitment. So I approve of your disco award. Having said that, you mentioned that both you and Jeff did most of the writing initially, and then you brought on writers. What were some of the challenges of translating very scientific based language into accessible language for the community?
I think perhaps I had a bit of a head start because in my job I'm dealing with patients all the time. So every single clinic more or less I find myself explaining Huntington's from the very basics, from the gene, and by the way, this is what a gene is, the mutation, the CAG expansion, the protein, and how that damages neurons, which are brain cells. And so that was a part of my everyday life. So for me, that was a bit of a head start because I could just sort of close my eyes and imagine myself explaining it to a patient, and not just is it too technical, but is it too depressing? Am I overhyping? Am I underhyping? So all of that kind of reality check. All clinicians have to do live in real time when we're speaking to patients, particularly patients who are new to the field. Jeff, I don't know. He had been on his own journey from army infantry soldier to PhD candidate. That was a very rapid learning curve for him. And so I'm guessing that he would have just imagined himself 6 or 7 years earlier and trying to explain to his former self. We did actually assemble a kind of board of, I can't remember what we called them, something like sense checkers who were family members. Matt Ellison was the founder of HDO, and a group of others, some family members, some scientists. And we kind of used to run ideas past them. And so there was all of that. And then we used to obsess over every word. And then eventually, once we'd written a few articles, the site was set up so that we could add words to a glossary. And so we knew that if a word was in the glossary already, people could hover over it and there'd be an explanation that would pop up. So the technology really kind of helped us, but it was a kind of bespoke software platform that was written for us by my ex-partner, actually, which made him cheap, Mark Sutton. And I think he deserves a name check because he's still the webmaster. So it was kind of technology assisted, but we would kind of bounce ideas off each other and this sort of panel of sense checkers. And then as soon as we pressed go on the launch, and we launched with sort of 10 or 11 articles already written, we just read every syllable of feedback that we received, and we devoured it and used it to hone the message, the tone, the content, the impact that can have. And that kind of feedback was the most important way to figure out whether we were hitting the right note.
And did some of that feedback to help you and Jeff with that the HDBuzz was relevant and people were engaging with it?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, the technology also kind of gives you a sense of things like page views, subscribers to the newsletter, Facebook likes, retweets and followers on Twitter and so on. And so we had a sense that this thing was growing really rapidly, and we would look at the metrics for each article and figure out, which ones had been popular. So in other words, what people like reading about, to get down into the weeds about, whether we had done a good job of sort of explaining any individual concept. We had to go into the kind of more detailed feedback. But we, from the moment we launched, honestly, it was just like a tidal wave of love and appreciation. And as soon as after the first 12 hours of the website going live, we looked at this feedback together and realized that we were going to be doing this for a while.
Like, as I said, I started in 2009 and it was very difficult for me to find any resource that was able to articulate even the history of Huntington's research and to unpack it and understand it. And you might not recall, but you and Jeff did this wonderful presentation in 2016 at the American Convention, which was in Baltimore. And you did this presentation and you used the tree as an image, and you were doing and I loved that. I still to this day loved that presentation you did, because I was sitting there with community members from Canada and America. Can I say, and I'm sorry to the Americans, the Canadians are better dancers than the Americans. I'm just putting it out there. And I joined the Canadian group because they were smaller, they were outnumbered. But you gave this wonderful presentation. You used the tree and you did an overview of research from the beginning of time until 2016, and that was I just loved that presentation, and that meant a great deal to the audience. I'm not sure if you realized that, but I was sitting on the floor and it meant a great deal to them. And so I wanted to I wanted to make sure you and Jeff knew that. What would you say now, given from 2016 to now there's even been more significant movement? Where do you see the role, I suppose, where do you see HDBuzz? What's the role of HDBuzz now, given that we are in quite exciting times in research?
It's amazing to look back at how things have changed. So when we launched, we were about kind of bringing people up to speed about what was coming. And then in 2015, so 4 or 5 years after we launched, was when the first Huntington lowering trial began. And that was the first time that a molecule designed to target HD was given to a human being. And that's, 22 years after the discovery of the gene in 93, and that's simply how long it takes. And then since then, we've had a roller coaster, as you know, which comes with highs and lows. Obviously the kind of most memorable moment for many people, unfortunately, is the plug being pulled rather on the phase 3 tominersen trial back in 2021 in the depths of COVID. We weren't going to sugarcoat it, but we weren't going to wallow in misery either. We were going to tell people what happened and promise to keep updating people as new information came in. And then also reminding people that the drug developers talk about shots on goal. This was one drug in the context of one trial, but we always knew that any drug can have a negative result, an unexpected negative result, however promising that drug seems. So we were always working in parallel on not only multiple ways to lower production of the Huntington protein, but multiple other stuff as well that wasn't directly targeting the Huntington protein. But you can't pursue everything either, because there isn't infinite money and there certainly aren't infinite patients to test these. So there has to be a process of everything's cool, but what's the most promising? What can we get into patients? What's worth testing? What is worth the time and sacrifices that we know that our patients and families are willing to make? And so that's kind of where we were 4 years ago now. I have to say 2024 was a big year for HDBuzz because it was Jeff and Ed letting go of the back of the bike, handing over to our new editorial team, who are somewhat younger than us, not as young as they used to be, but who is. But they are just an amazing pair of talented scientists and writers and communicators. They're imaginative, they are resourceful, and they've just hit the ground running at full speed. And I have to say, then there's very few things that fill me with more pride than whenever I see an unexpected HDBuzz article that I knew nothing about arriving in my inbox. And like many of my professional colleagues, I'm now relying on HDBuzz to let me know what new papers have come out and what new science is happening, because no one can fully keep across all of it.
So maybe on a final note, what's been the most rewarding part of HDBuzz for you? And if you know what it is for Jeff, by all means, please comment. It's
going to sound like an obvious answer, but it's the feedback we get from patients, both, online, but really in person. My favorite part of the HD conferences that I attend are the breaks, where I can kind of hang out in the corridors of hotel basements and chat to people about people just like to share their stories, tell me that HDBuzz has made a difference. And even one of those conversations makes all of the effort worthwhile. And I'm just delighted to have been of service to this community in this way. I think right now, the thing I'm proudest of is how the new editors, Sarah Hernandez and Rachel Harding, have taken the ball and are running with it. And I'm just so excited to see where it goes next. I recently had an opportunity to see Jeff here in Australia late last year. He gave me insight into the amount of work and commitment it has taken for both of you, given that you also have other jobs that are also very high demand in terms of effort and so forth. So on behalf of Huntington's Victoria, and I'm sure the community in Australia and our gorgeous colleagues in New Zealand, we want to thank you both for creating HDBuzz, for being so committed and devoted to the community. I have seen it with my own eyes, as I said, for some period of time. And so I wanted to take this opportunity to express our appreciation that because of the work that you both have done, that the community now have a trusted resource where they can access information that they know is reliable, they can understand it, and they can make some informed decisions about their own healthcare. So it's had real ramifications. Can't highlight that enough. And I just want to thank you and Jeff, and from the bottom of our hearts, we just think you are both wonderful. Thank you, Tammy, and thanks to Huntington's Vic, and thanks to the Australian and global HD community. It's been and continues to be a huge pleasure. It has been hard work, but like I say, just one of those emails would have made the whole thing worthwhile, and there have been hundreds, thousands, and the conversations continue. So thank you, and I would like to extend my thanks into the future to the new HDBuzz team and everyone that is working with them. And like I say, I'm super excited about everything that happens next. Let us solve this problem of Huntington's disease forever.